I'm Dwayne Adel, president of our association, and Addison is our director from Region 3 right here in Gander. And Addison is the brains of the operation, so I'm just here to look good. So if you got any tough questions, he's the guy, all right? So our topic today obviously is on, our municipalities and their fire departments and why we need to have such strong relationships. And for most of you in this room, you already know this. And some of the things that we're going to be talking about, for example, are things that you're probably going to ask yourself, well, why does he need to tell me that? And true, some of the things you don't need to understand because you're doing a great job as it is. However, there are some folks who need some help. And for those of us and those of you who already get this and you're doing a great job, maybe you'll pick up a few little pointers today that you can use to be the vehicle of change. And that's how I think we need to go forward. So we're not suggesting in any way that you guys are not doing a great job. But like you, we are managers in the firehouse. I'm a fire chief in Come by Chance. Addison is the assistant deputy chief here in Gander. And so we're managers as well. We're on the management team with you guys.
So who we are is we're Association of Newfoundland and Labrador Fire Services. We represent approximately 6,000 firefighters throughout the province. We are the voice for the fire service in the province. So we will bring issues to the government and see if we can help out fire departments across the province. And our mandate is to enhance the fire services throughout Newfoundland and Labrador since 1964.
Amanya, we haven't been here since 1964, just so you know, right? So to help us understand why we need to put more work into building our relationships today, we hope this morning to be able to help you understand some of the stressors that we're getting today that we haven't had in the past, or maybe we had them and didn't recognize them. So some of the fires that we're getting: structure fires, motor vehicle accidents. This is a big one for us, assisting with EMS. Town emergencies. Some of the busiest times that I've had is when our water treatment plant goes down. When our town's infrastructure fails and we have no fire water. And we've had to spend as high as 2 days at one point just pumping water through our town with our pumper truck. And during a major water outage, we spent about 3 weeks trucking water with our fire truck to keep our town going. And we moved over 1 million gallons of water with volunteers.
We also respond to ATV, UTV, snowmobile incidents, missing persons, and assisting other agencies as well. We get calls from the RCMP numerous times to help out to find someone. Someone's lost in the woods, we can give them a hand as well. Pets up in trees. Believe it or not, we do get those calls. Trying to use a bit of discretion.
During COVID, a lovely cat named Turnip got up in the top of a pole and Come by Chance. So everybody turned to the fire department because Newfoundland Power, they really wanted to restrict where they went because we were just, the province was locked down. We didn't know what we were facing. And so getting them out was a bit difficult. So everyone said, well, boy, you're the fire chief, you got to figure this out. Now, you'd never tell by looking at me in this uniform, but I'm not built for climbing poles. So, so here I am, courageously climbing through snowbanks with a can of tuna. And I rolled in over the snowbank. That's the only way I could get there. And me and the young fella, right, me and my son. And he said, I joined the fire department, he said, and this is my first call. So he said, this is a bonding moment. So anyway, we got in, we put the tuna down. We figured, this is going to get turnip because, it was good tuna, right? It was the white tuna too. It wasn't the cheap stuff. And yeah, so anyway, we got back at the snowbank and two other cats came out of the woods and ate the tuna.
We also get gas detection calls. So residents will call saying their CO alarms are activated in their home. So we'll respond to those type of calls. Down power lines. Natural disasters as well. And assist with traffic controls at funerals and or community events. And some departments, not all departments on the island do cold water rescue as well. High angle rescue, depending on parts of the province, we could get into high angle, low angle rescue. And hazardous material response. Some departments do full medical response as well.
How many folks here in your community, if somebody takes seriously ill, the fire department is going to be the first ones on scene? Wow.
And vehicle extrication services as well.
So sometimes we wonder. I was not drinking this morning, just so you know. That wasn't me. Well, you know what? So I called Newfoundland Power and I said, well, look, I can't get this cat down. I mean, so of course, they're all laughing at me in the background. He said, have you got it going? I said, well, that's not going to work. He said, is he on a transformer? I said, no, it's just a pole with hard. So he said, he's not going to die. He'll come down. Why, he was up there 3 days, right? And on the third day, they sent a truck out. So two fellows came out in separate trucks because they're not allowed to ride together. And when they got up on top of the pole, turnip tore the life out of them. Well, but anyway, we got turnip down. So those are the calls we love talking about because they're not very stressful. But I'm going to play something now, and I'm going to tell you up front that this may be a little disturbing. Okay. And I apologize for that, but I think it's important that you understand why sometimes we're under so much stress. Can we play that clip?
From 911, just received a report of a in company 76925.
So you're in bed and you've had a long day. And it was a Saturday, late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, and that's what wakes you up. So if it's 1 o'clock on a Sunday morning, who's on the track on the ATV? Right? It's someone from your community. And it's going to be someone that we know. So we respond. And it was a young person from our community, tremendously serious injuries in a very remote area. And we couldn't get to them very easily. So we did commandeer a 4-wheel drive truck, and we got our equipment down there. then you would think, well, now it's just part of the job. But it's not just part of the job because we all know him. And his dad was there and his friends. So we start doing what we're doing, and then I get a call. The ambulance is delayed, has to come from Clarenville, so it's an extra 20 minutes. So we got to do our thing, and then mom shows up. So mom is a really good friend. So I got to leave what I'm doing, and I got to go up and see mom and try to keep mom calm, because we know what mom's going to do when she gets down there, right? She's going to want to get her arms around him, and we can't allow that because of the situation. So we dealt with all that, and here I am on scene. My two sons are with me, and it was probably that afternoon that they were down there on ATVs. So all this gets very personal sometimes.
So some of the incidents that we've had, actually last year, we had a 103 Cormorant crash at the airport. It was early March, about 3:45 in the afternoon. We're in our department, we're a composite department, so we have career firefighters also and volunteer. About 95% of our department are volunteer. So our fire chief got a call from the airport fire chief at the time, saying that a Cormorant had went down. So we paged it out. While we're waiting at the fire hall for our volunteers to show up, I think it was the longest 4 minutes of our lives. Just waiting to get people there. They weren't long getting there. A lot of things going through our minds. Are there any survivors? On that aircraft, there's a pilot, co-pilot, flight engineer, and 2 SARTECs. So there's possibly a minimum of 5 people on board. Could be more depending on what type of exercise they're doing. So we responded to the airport the whole way up through looking for smoke, see if we could see anything if the aircraft was on fire. This was the first real magnitude air crash since the Aero Air, really. There's been a couple other small incidents with aircraft on the airport. But this one is our first for our fire department since we got a call for. There was no advance notice of any issues of the aircraft at the time. They were doing a maneuver just above the runway. They were approximately about 40 to 50 feet in the air when the seat on the aircraft dropped and the pilot lost the controls. So when he lost the controls, the aircraft banked to its side and went down to the ground. So we were anticipating no survivors at the time. When we got there, the crash rescue was already on scene. They were maintaining a path for us to get in at the aircraft. Luckily, when we arrived on scene, everybody was out of the aircraft. So everybody survived. A few injuries, most of them were transported to hospital. No life-threatening injuries, anything like that. So they were very lucky that day. So some of the other stressful things we had to deal with then was we noticed that there was fuel leaking from the aircraft. So we monitored that. When we looked, there was actually a drain by the aircraft that the fuel started to head towards. So we had to make sure that was all blocked off so that we didn't lose any fuel down underground. Hazardous materials on board the aircraft as well. The Cormorant is made of composite material. So in the air, even if it's not burning, when it breaks apart in the air, it floats around in the air. It's like little particles, and that's worse than burning. So we had everybody in our breathing apparatus to make sure that nobody was breathing in the hazardous materials, plus what they were carrying on board as well. There's different flare markers that they carry and stuff like that. So a lot of that had to be safety. because it is active. On the Cormorant itself, there are deployable rafts that when the aircraft lands in water, crashes in water, they deploy. We didn't know if they were going to go off on us or anything like that. So it became a lot of our fire department members on the scene at that time. That was their very first incident at the airport. So they were like a deer in headlights. Right? They didn't know what to expect. So so getting to the fire hall is another thing, because most of the time we are here in Gander, we page out two different ways. It's either we go to the fire hall or we go right to the incident, depending on what it is. So that day we had to wait to get volunteers to the fire hall, and once we got a crew, we headed to the airport. Also, we at that time, our dispatch, we advised them to get other agencies moving as well. So we made sure that the ambulance was called, the RCMP were notified as well. As soon as an aircraft crashes, it's a federal, becomes federal. So the RCMP will do the investigation. The only thing different with this one, it was a military aircraft, so the military took over right away. It's their aircraft, and they would take care of the investigation and everything. So, but we all did work together. The military came in, asked us what we needed, if we needed anything, stuff like that. So everything worked out really good that day.
But sometimes we got to ask ourselves on the way. And we got to be thinking about these things, and because we're the ones who people are going to look to have the decisions made. How are we going to get to where the incident is? If it's, like that was a lucky one. Imagine the morning that the aero crash happened. They had to figure out how to get there. How do we get to it? All those things are things that our fire chiefs and our officers had to be thinking about on the way to the scene. Getting enough people to do the response. Like in some communities, we're really good, but I'm willing to bet that most of your communities are like ours. Today, if there was a fire and come by chance, we have about 3 people. Because everybody's working at the oil refinery. Those who aren't working away. So we're challenged. We're really challenged during fishing season. Once the boats hit the water in some communities, you got very few people kicking around. So all these things are stressors that work against us. And then, of course, information. Like in Addison's case there, he didn't have all the information. He didn't know if there was fatalities. He didn't know if there was hazardous materials. He didn't know what the thing blew up. So he's responding to this, and he is responsible for all those people in uniform. He is responsible for each and every one of them, morally and legally. So this is on his mind.
Just to add to that, as well, crash firefighting is a lot different than structural firefighting. In our department, we do train with the military for the Cormorant, because they don't have a fire department at the base anymore. So we do training with them. So they teach us how different safety features on board the aircraft. But at that time, like I said, we don't, our volunteers really don't practice too much into the crash side of it. So they get really lost. On the scene that day, myself and the deputy fire chief, we're both ex-military firefighters. So we have crash experience. The only thing with me is when I got out of the military, they introduced the Cormorant after that. So I didn't really get to play with the Cormorant to know its features as much as the Labrador helicopter at the time.
Because with all of the stressors that we're facing today, along with, because firefighting hasn't changed a lot. We've always had these things on our plate. But there's so many new things now, like the legal requirements, all of those things that put stressors on us. We got to work together. We need you and you need us, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. And one of our biggest challenges now is keeping our people. You know, we get a lot of people in through the doors, but you talk to any of the guys like Melvin Harnham and Glenn Clark and people like that who honestly can tell you that 90% of who come in don't stay, or they don't stay very long. So recruitment is a big issue for us. In the province today, in our fire service, we got approximately 6,000 volunteers. That's a lot of people giving their time to their community. We only got 2 full-time career fire departments, and that's St. John's and Corner Brook. We got 6 composite departments, and those are, like Addison's department, are made up of some paid staff and mostly volunteer. What would you say, Addison? What percentage of your folks are volunteer?
Roughly 95%.
Yeah, so they're still mostly volunteers. And we got a couple of we got 3 industrial fire departments. Other than that, so they make up about 500 people, 450, 500. So the other 5,500 people are doing this as volunteers. At the scene, we have priorities that we have to attend to that Addison is going to speak to now. And boy, these things are really important to us.
So the first one is life safety, obviously, life safety of our firefighters. On the scene, we have to make sure that everybody's accounted for at a scene, that they're safe. As we know, during our calls, it's not the safest time to be in the location that we are in. So we make sure that we keep track of every firefighter that's on scene, and make sure that at the end of the day, everybody goes home. Incident stabilization, we're going to make sure everything changes in a matter of seconds at a call. You could have a structure fire, and then all of a sudden now we're going to be dealing with a collapse in the building, a lost firefighter inside, things like that. So there's many different things that we have to take into account. And then the third priority is property and environment. So if there's, especially the structure fire houses next door, we got to try and protect those. We don't want to lose any more houses and things like that. So we could try to protect those as best we can.
Well, to that point, why is that so important to us? Well, obviously there's financial reasons and stuff, but in most of our communities today, if somebody loses their home, is there a place next door for them to move right into? Or do we lose that person from the community? What about if they're our best volunteer? Now we got a bigger problem, right? Some of our fire scenes have never, they've always been the same as what they were since firefighting started. And we think it's easy. We put the water on the fire, and that's what does all the work, but that's not how fire works. And things are much different today than they were when Melvin Harnham started firefighting 48 years ago. Wouldn't you say, Melvin? Fires burn so much faster and so much hotter. A legacy home, what did we have, Addison? Probably 15 minutes.
15 to 20 minutes at least.
And what are you seeing now at a new home construction?
5 minutes. By the time we get to a new home construction, it could be, as you can see in the fire picture there, that's probably 20, 30 years ago. Those houses, that's about the size of fire that you're going to see. Today, you'd see a fully engulfed home, right? Especially open concept homes. And actually, another thing I've noticed at fire scenes now are those heat pumps on the side of your house. When your house catch fire, they don't shut off. So they're pushing fresh air into the home the whole time the fire is burning. Right? So when we get on scene, first thing we do is we find a disconnect outside, we turn it off. But by the time we get there, the fire is getting pretty big at that time, right? So that's what we do. A lot of people don't realize that those things don't shut down, right? Unless the power happens to go to the home, right?
Yeah.
We just had a fire back home last weekend. Cell phone traffic.
Yeah.
You know, stuff that comes with all the things that can happen. I hope it completely doesn't.
Yeah, it's actually, it's funny you say that because we did get a bulletin on that probably this week that the cell phone charger now, people just leave them laying on furniture or under bed. The cell phone charger itself actually caught the bed on fire. Yeah.
Yep. Motor vehicle accidents. These never stop. The problem for us in this day and age is they're happening more frequently because more people are traveling. The speed is unbelievable. I mean, we're up on the Trans-Canada Highway. Addison is out on the Trans-Canada Highway. And people couldn't care less about us. We had the former fire chief in Cumberland was ran over on the highway. Yeah. So, I mean, this is real. You know, firefighters are getting hurt. And sometimes they're what we call our regular accident, where we can get at the vehicle like that first picture. But the second one, and this came from Carbonear back in, I'll say, late 70s. Some of you might remember it. It was a day in Rouse truck that went through the Rural Brother Fisheries office. And so here were the guys then, but you can see they had wooden ladders to get up and rescue the guy. So we've always been challenged. But things are a little different now because there's so many other stressors in our lives that are making things more complicated for us.
So yeah, so like motor vehicle accidents, like Dwayne said, they are rising on our highways. Obviously with the speed, moose vehicle collisions as well. And different things. So we get into all we get when we get a call is possibly single vehicle occupants are still inside the vehicle. So that's about as much information we get when we're going to a call. So a lot of things go through your head while you're responding, especially sitting in the officer's seat. The person that's going to be in charge is, what am I going to see? What am I going to face? What equipment I'm going to need? And that's the worst thing to be doing, but you got to prepare yourself for the worst. We've responded to numerous calls where I remember one, we had a call and it was 4 vehicles involved. There was bodies everywhere. That's all we got. When we got there, there was 1 vehicle and 1 person inside that wasn't even injured. So you get the people traveling on the highway. We've even seen it. They've called 911, said there's a vehicle accident 10 kilometers west of Gander, but they keep traveling. They don't even stop. Right. So we kind of try to tell 911 to ask them to at least stay at the scene so that we can talk to them and see what we got. Right.
ATV accidents are happening more frequently in our communities. Machines are getting bigger, they're getting faster. People using them are getting younger. We're not wearing helmets when we should be wearing helmets because we think it's too inconvenient, and then it's left for us to deal with. We've had head-on collisions between ATVs and vehicles in our little community of Crumlech. And when we have an ATV accident, we know it's going to be nasty before we ever leave the house. Plus, we're wondering, who is this? You know, snowmobile accidents. Addison probably has more experience with them than I do. We don't get much snow at our way anymore, but they can be nasty.
Yeah, we've had a few. Luckily, we don't get a lot, which is good. But most of them that we do, we find that when we attend these type of calls, drinking is involved. We had one there the winter. It wasn't a snowmobile, but it was an ATV. Gentleman rolled it, and he was still inside. It was a side-by-side actually, and he was impaired. Right, so it's that's where we find there's more of that. People, I guess they figured, well, I'm only on the trail, I can have a few drinks. That's not necessarily the case. Like Dwayne said, you do get. I've seen here in Gander, especially a lot of young people on these machines that are way too fast for them to handle. 16, 15-year-olds on a 1,000 stone machine is a bit much, right? So we do get those type of calls, not a lot, which is good. But when we do get them, they're normally not a good scene, right?
Some of the more frequent calls we're getting now, and it's getting a lot more attention, is the EMS assist, going to medical calls. You know, we train, the reason that firefighters train to do first aid is to be prepared on their scene, to look after themselves. It was never actually intended that we would be taking over, you know, the services for the ambulances. Now, in some communities, that had to be the case years ago, and they've always done it. But now we have, you know, we assume that we have this great system in place. What you can see from all the hands that went up earlier, we've got an issue in the province where firefighters are responding more and more now to medical calls. And I'm going to say medical calls now are our most frequent call behind motor vehicle accidents. Sometimes they're not really good calls, you know, like doing CPR on people. And people that you know, people in your community that you spoke to yesterday at the post office, right? That makes it hard on us. Because they are people that we know personally, and it's happening more frequently. And that is a big piece of work that our association has taken on. We're working with the ambulance associations because we know that our members are going through this. And more often than not, in our aging communities now, the calls are not turning out the way we want them to. You know, we go and we do what we can and we do everything that we're trained to do. But, you know, the decision was made before we even got the call that this wasn't going to turn out the way we wanted. So there's a study being done, it's been done, and there's studies ongoing with what's happening in the volunteer fire service. Why are we losing so many people? Why are fire departments struggling to retain their firefighters? So this was a study done by the National Volunteer Fire Safety Council. It's done in the United States, but when we looked at the results, they're the exact same results that we got through our association when we asked these questions. Over 2/3 of the respondents said that they were having difficulty with the retention of volunteers. Now, in Newfoundland and Labrador, that's a little higher. It's about 75 to 80% of fire departments are concerned about it. 70% of the fire service leadership believes we have a problem. And that is confirmed. 50% of our current members that are interviewed, and this is an alarming statistic. Almost 50% of the people that we talk to, and we're talking about people now like me and Addison, you know, Melvin Harnham, who's been there 48 years, Glenn Clark, who spent a lifetime at it, people like that. 50% of them are just saying every single day, I think I should leave. So the ones that we think are our mainstay that are never going to go, 50% of them say every day I think about it. You know, and I'm one of them. Addison is one of them. There's days that we just, you know, maybe things need to change that way too. You know, we got to hold on to our people. So one of the questions asked was, why did we leave? And one of the big answers that they got was they didn't feel supported. That was a big reason for leaving. The realities of volunteer changed. And we're just talking about this morning. The realities of volunteer changed. Everything that, when we went to an accident 20 years ago, a fellow was in the ditch. Most likely, you pushed him up out of the ditch and you had a good story to tell and he went on his way. Very seldom were they as bad as what they are today. Things have changed. You know, if we went to a house fire 25 years ago, the house was still standing when we left. My last house fire, so we got the call Sunday morning at 10 o'clock and we're all around. So within 8 minutes, I think it was, we left the fire hall. We went to our neighboring community. When we got there was nothing but a basement. And I said, boys, why'd you wait so long to call us? We called you when we got the call. So we're talking about 8 to 9 minutes by the time we left our hall, another 3 minutes to get there because just across the highway. There's nothing left. Things have changed. Some folks said that there was a lack of expectation. So we do this to ourselves. We tell people, you know, there's nothing to this, boy, come on in and we'll train you, and boy, we're going to have a good time, and you know, you'll feel great about yourself. You're serving your community. But we got to be more realistic. People are not prepared for how much time it takes to be a volunteer in their community, whether it's a counselor, a mayor, a firefighter, or an officer. We got to make our expectations better known. This is what's involved. So if you're just coming in to ride on the big red truck, maybe you need to rethink this. If you're only going to get on council because they only meet once every 2 weeks and it's only for an hour, maybe we need to tell folks. Because a lot of people join up and then they realize this here is, you know, all the work that you guys have to do, and then they leave. And you guys experience that every day. So why were people considering leaving? The good, hardcore people that have been around forever. Some said they were treated like second-class citizens. That's how they felt. For various reasons that we won't get into now, and some of it was just misunderstandings. Volunteers are treated like they're just disposable. Sometimes volunteers are treated like they're disposable. How many times have people called you folks because there's, you know, they got an issue and they call you, and because you don't have the answer right away, well, you're going to get it now. You know, and they don't realize that, you know, you're there doing a job that they won't do. Some said they don't think their department is working towards the future. Pretty much stuck in the 90s for the last 30 years. If we don't keep things fresh and we don't keep people engaged and interested, and we don't keep adding to what we have, people are going to lose respect for what we have, and they're not going to enjoy that anymore. This is a big one. Fire chief is not trained to the best practices. That's a big one. So I joined the volunteer fire department. I want to do a good job. And we go to the fire hall and we tell a few yarns, and then we leave and come home again. Do you think people are going to want to be part of that? That's just a hangout then. And it starts at the top, because if I'm not doing my job, if I'm not the hardest worker in the room, why are people going to follow me? And we got to be telling our fire chiefs, if you're going to take this job and you want to wear this here and you want to brag that you're the fire chief, you got to be willing to do the job. And we're not saying you got to have all the answers, but there's places you can go to get the answers, and you got to be willing to work at it.
So
Like the mayor of the town, and like I said, I've been on the fire service, I was on our Wayne them for 14 years. Now become mayor the last 2 years. I worked with the town for 37 before I got there. One thing, all of us here is leaders in our town, and we got to sanction our chief. Tell me I'm wrong. That's our due diligence to sanction a chief. We just had a meeting now back 3 weeks ago, and really hits me. Here I am sitting in a chair now as being a mayor, and he brought in the name that he picked amongst herself for chief. And like I told my council when we were finding the name, like there's a big responsibility, and he's our leader in our town to do for a lot of responsibility. So before we give this credit, make sure that we know what we're doing. I already knew, because I knew the guys, I knew that I worked with them, and so I knew it was a good choice. But the rest of my new councillors around there, if I wasn't there, they probably would have accepted and not even think about what you got. but I'm just want to throw that plug in, boys. It's the responsible of everybody here in this room, there's mayors and councillors, whatever. When you sign up for that chief, that's who gives 90% of the time, that's what makes the fire hall, is the chief and his way of dealing with stuff. Thank you.
So some of the other issues are the expectation of legal requirements can be too much for a volunteer. Too much micromanaging. Sometimes some departments I've had been talking to, there's way too much micromanaging. Let the firefighters do their job. They know, a lot of them know how to do their jobs, so there's no need to micromanage them. A lot of it, not enough funding from local or provincial governments. And we noticed in the last year or so, price of equipment has really skyrocketed. Probably 2 years ago, a set of bunker gear was $1,500. Today it's almost $3,000. So it's
65% increase. I work in that business too, so I can tell you, in all honesty, 65 to 70% increase in some items.
Decisions made about the fire department without any consultation and downloading to the volunteer and open to public scrutiny, reports being released to the public. I think this is an issue that we are facing right now with a couple of departments, or one at least, where the public wants information on certain calls. Don't know why. It is some of it is public knowledge, but right now we're going through. You want to talk a little bit on that?
So what's happening? The fire department went to a scene and they did a really good job. Everybody, the fire commissioner, the privacy commissioner, everybody says in the report that there was absolutely nothing done wrong. But there's a person who believes that their names, the names of the firefighters and their pictures should be released to the public. Now that may not seem like a very big deal, but it's a big deal. And I'm going to tell you why. I go up on the highway today and I see some stuff that I don't want to see. And I do my job, I deal with that. And then I'm sitting at home and I'm finally starting to get those visions out of my mind. And somebody calls and says, I'm told you were there, 2 weeks ago. I want to know. And they come up with all these questions, and then I got to relive that incident. And I just personally went through that. I went to a person's home and it didn't turn out the way that it needed, that we wanted it to be. And that person's daughter, who doesn't live in the community, called me. All these questions. And I had to relive everything that I saw. So that's just one piece of it. The other piece is, how are we going to keep people in our fire halls and get people to join our fire halls if they know everything that I do is going to be subject to public scrutiny? Because we know what happens. So Dwayne went in with fire hose and he did a good job. Next person tells the story. Well, he knocked a few things over. By the time that gets finished, the boys went in, they leveled the place, and they were at the wrong house. And like that's what can happen. And so we are working diligently on that with the fire department that's involved. But folks, you need to be aware of this, because that town did not realize that they could be put under that scrutiny. And they're dealing with it, but it's brand new to them. It's a new thing that we all have to learn. So get your heads around that. The ATIP, understanding, and this was where all the trouble came from. Because I honestly believe that had everybody completely understood the rules and the regulations, it wouldn't have gotten to where it's to today. Make sure you're doing your due diligence and understand what that legislation says, what it means, and why it's there. Well, how do we keep all this going? How are we gonna do it? If we're not one team with one goal and keeping our eyes on that prize, we're not gonna make it in our small communities. Gander will always make it. Clarenville, St. John's, Corner Brook, Grand Falls, Windsor, the really big communities, they have it. They have the ability to continue to make it. Come by chance. So I got less than 200 residents. I probably only got less than 100 that are full-time residents. Right, I got very few people to choose from. I got 15 firefighters. And there's probably another 15 in the community that could, but other than that, there's no one that can do the job. So I can't afford to lose one, let alone a half a dozen. And they're not banging on the doors to get in. To do that, we have to build the relationships. And this is not only for the fire service. Think about your recreation, think about your beautification committees, all of our volunteer committees. We have to build that relationship. Breaking down any barriers that separate us. And some of these barriers, I know they mean a lot to us in the moment, but boy, think about it. What are some of the reasons that we don't talk to somebody else? Because their great-grandfather wronged my great-grandfather, so I'm never going to be his friend. That's alive and well, isn't it? Yeah, I don't like you because your wife won at bingo. And my wife didn't, and I had listened to that all night. I know that's pretty lighthearted, and it's more serious than that. But you know what? We got to let stuff go. If that's what's holding us back. And you know what? Maybe somebody did wrong me very much. And maybe it hurt me when they did that. But I got to let that go. I got to, you know what? I got to look at the bigger prize here. All right, so we need to include our fire departments in the decision-making process when it affects us. Show an interest in learning more about our challenges. When you guys get involved in the firehouse and you say, I honestly want to know what you do and what your challenges are, it's appreciated. Focus on the real goal. Forget about all the foolishness. Look at what we really have to do and do so with a very positive attitude. We got to motivate our people. To help do that, there's some science that we use. It's called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now that seems a little bit complicated, but it just talks about the basic needs that people have. And if we apply this to running our firehouse, it may work out for us a little better.
Yeah, so ensure our firefighters have the basic needs while serving, especially during long, difficult calls. Food, water, coffee, stuff like that. Having the tools to do the job. And sometimes all you need is for them to know that they're being thinking about them as well, right? So different things the small things like that go a long way to the volunteer. Keep going. Okay. Promoting a culture of respect and understanding. Build a team atmosphere where we're all together in this. And basically eliminate the us and them culture. Provide opportunities for success and accomplishments. And rewards success at every opportunity and recognize individual accomplishments.
You know, we don't have to win the Nobel Peace Prize to before we thank somebody for the work that they're doing. And while it may not be a big deal, people need to feel respected and appreciated. And it's our job as leaders, you know what? It's our job. It's our job as leaders to do that. Self-fulfillment. Support self-development. Send your firefighters to training. If your fire chief is going to be a good leader, your fire chief needs leadership training. sending them to leadership training, like here at these symposiums, if there's a leadership seminar being done, what's wrong with bringing your fire chief to it? And let them learn something too. Dedicated people have a desire to be the most that they can be. And if we don't allow them to be the most that they can be, they don't feel fulfilled. Abraham Maslow, who developed this philosophy, said what a person can be, they must be. And if they can't be, they don't want it. They don't want it. Why is all this on us? This is the cold hard facts. We asked for this job. Whether we like the outcome or whether we like the work that comes with it, too bad. We asked for this job. And if we're going to do this job, then it has to be us. Because if I'm going to stand in front of you and say, I'm president of the association, look at me in my nice uniform, I'd better be prepared to do the work. I know you guys are, because if you wouldn't be here. So you know what? We already got a lot of things going for us. We got a lot of things going for us. Now we have to capitalize on that. Here we go.